So yeah, we've got Jay who works here. You might see him, the Korean cowboy, we call him, and not for long. And obviously Mike here, Mike Bonnici, and Mike's got trophy hunter tackle in Sondel, wherever Sondel is, up the back there. So what we thought we'd do tonight, because we've done a few tuna talks in the past, and we thought we'd do it a little bit differently. Wrote a bunch of questions that we get asked all the time, and we thought instead of us just planning something out, we'll just put some questions up and have a chat between us, and feel free to ask questions throughout or join in. So let's have a talk about tuna tactics. And what we'll first talk about is like different fishing methods. Obviously there's trolling, stick baiting, cubing, jigging, all different techniques. But we'll go through each one and we'll just have a bit of a chat about why we would do that method at a certain time. So let's start with trolling. And when would we choose to troll for tuna is a question that we get asked. But a lot of people just go out there and just troll lures all day. But I think there's times when trolling works better than, say, stick baiting or cubing and vice versa. So what would be some...
For us on Malakula, usually we don't know where the hell they are, so just to find them. Cover the ground. I mean, we always, 99% of the time, we always start with trolling anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty rare not to start trolling realistically.
Yeah.
Unless you're driving out and they're blowing up in front of you, that's about the only time you don't troll first. So,
yeah, well, I think that's something like, if you go back, say, 10 years ago or so, everyone would just go out trolling, or they would do another technique, which is normally cubing. But there's more techniques now that we can use, which are more suited for the conditions that are going on. So, that's most of the time trolling is for searching and looking to find fish, just see what's going on out there. And then I guess what fishing gear we would use and what drag settings we would use for tuna. I guess everyone's heard of Tiagras and like say Penn Internationals, but what we're finding is a lot of people are using like Talica setups or the Daiwa Saltiga setups, which are more braid-based with top shotting with mono on top. So I guess we could show you a couple of those rods and reels, just so you can see. There's a...
It's a bit lighter.
Yeah, it's like that's basically an 80-pound setup, like a 37 kilo, which most of you may know that, but that's lighter than a Tiagra 50. So, and Tiagra 50s are quite often used for 15 kilos. So it gives you an idea of they're faster retrieval and lighter. So a lot of people are going more this way. And drag settings for these, we're normally running like a third of the drag. So depending on the line class is what drag would run. That's the basic gear we're using. So the next question we get asked all the time, what lures and teasers do we run? Like the differences between, say, from fishing for marlin versus for tuna. So I thought we'd go through a typical spread of lures. So most people have got skirts left over from their marlin season, and the only thing different that we would do is the fact that there'd be like hooks are going to be like heavy gauge hooks, and that's probably the only difference. So you can use most of your marlin lures from summertime going into winter. Just make sure your hooks are nice and strong, because they don't need to be thin for tuna. And big barbs is the other thing that we like to have. So typically we would run, say, a skirted lure, a bibbed vibe, maybe a bib diver, but this guy here is one of the better ones, as you probably have heard of, the ones that Mike and Sondel bring out. So the Profigi is a fantastic lure for tuna. And if you're not running these, you're, I don't know, disadvantaged, I reckon. So all of these type of lures work for trolling. I guess I don't know what you'd run. Mike normally runs, what, 2 or 3 of these?
Yeah, you usually run 3 and a diver. A couple of skirts. Depending on if there's much, surface action. As soon as there's any surface action, usually we sort of cut it down to 2 lures. Just run two Profigis, and that way we can just pick up and run real quick if they're sort of coming up and down every now and again. Not so much, all day. Sometimes they can be real finicky, and yeah, you sort of got to be pretty quick. So
they troll pretty fast as well.
They can handle a fair bit of speed, and they also catch fish when you sort of stop and they sink down and they waddle down there, and the rod goes off while you're casting at stick bait.
What speed would you be trolling at?
Your normal trolling speed, 7 knots, 8 knots, but they handle 10 knots pretty comfortably.
I think we've gone faster with that.
Yeah. I look back sometimes and we're doing 20 knots and they're just skipping along the surface. It's just that, yeah. But your normal 7, 8 knots is perfect.
Oh, I'm just going to show this other little toy that I like to run that Mike doesn't like, but I like.
I like the look of it. It looks good.
It looks good? I know a few people that have caught some fish with these around here. This is another thing you could add as a sort of a teaser, but also just put it in line with your setup. So basically got a little bird at the top, a couple of little squids, and then like a bullet style lure at the back. It's not IGFA, so for tournaments and all that, it's not legal, but it does do a couple of things. One, it obviously causes a bit of attraction in the water. Secondly, it also adds weight so that back lure is actually staying in the water a lot. So it's got that advantage. And you can actually run this anywhere from shotgun to in the corners. It works at most of the spots. But one place I do like to run it is on a short rigger because of that reason it's got a bit of weight to keep the back lure down in the water. That's just something you can play around with, have a look.
I will add as well, we sell a lot of bullets here, and most of the time the guys bring it back going, it wasn't doing anything. And we're like, well, it's not meant to do anything, but if you add that on, it actually gives a lot more action, obviously, the front of it. Makes it makes you think it's doing something.
Yeah, pass it around. So we've shown you a few lures that we would use for trolling. And then I guess, like teaser-wise, that's one thing that a few of us use in front of a skirted lure. And actually, I know someone that uses a Profigi behind it as well, and seems to work well. The other teasers that you can use, we've got like the strip teasers that you have during your marlin season, which we have all hanging up on the side there. And one you may not have seen before is that big Profigi dredge there. So that's pretty new, and that's pretty serious, that 3 tier 1. But for like say small boats, you could run a single or a double tier, and it works, just looks like a school of slimies behind the boat. That's what it looks like there, a bunch of those fish. I'll pass that around, you can have a look at it. Hopefully it'll eventually come around that way. You can hear that. I guess we get asked a lot, like, what is the best trolling speed for tuna? It's not much different really to marlin trolling, but you could go a bit quicker, couldn't you?
Yeah, I reckon as quick as the lures will work.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when it's rough conditions, skirts sort of skip around a fair bit. That's the other good thing about a Profigi or a diver, they sort of just dig in. And I think the quicker they can stay down and straight is probably the best. But yeah, that sort of standard trolling speed's fine.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, we've covered. Is there any questions on the trolling side of it?
How far back do you run the different types of lures there, Alex?
Okay. Skirts versus bibs. You know, the good thing about having 3 of us talk here, hopefully, is that we all get a different opinion out of all of us and confuse everyone even more. But what I'd say is, like, quite often that little Halco Max is quite often run in, say, a short corner position. And the Profigis do actually run pretty much anywhere. In general, with tuna, we do run our lures just a little bit further back. It's not like the tuna don't, but they will eat up close, but it just seems that, like, I don't know, my experience has been a bit further back. Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon. I usually run them a bit further back. Always run the shotgun probably 50 metres or 40 metres further than you'd normally run it for marlin.
Yeah. I think there'd be at least 100 metres, that shotgun.
I think the biggest technique is just to not make sure you don't tangle up all your lures. Because they are a lot further back than normal. When you turn, it's a lot more. So I mean, if you've got two lures at a similar distance, especially when you turn, one will come into the same length and you've got wind and whatnot. I think that's probably the most important part. As long as you've got them staggered out there and they're all swimming in the right position, that's probably the main thing.
Yeah, and also you got like your Profigi versus a skirt. The Profigi's surface more, doesn't get tangled as much with the other one, which is good for...
Yeah, plus your skirts may blow across the spread a bit more, whereas your Profigi or a diver won't. They'll sort of hold track a bit better.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like that's why we sort of just run two of the same lure when there's fish sort of jumping around, so it's just don't have to really turn around and worry about it.
Yeah.
Surface temperature, are there sort of ranges of temperature that you'd be looking for or avoiding?
Yeah, I think, look, we'll actually come to that a little bit later on, but leave that a little bit. We'll come to that. So I guess the next technique is one that both Jay and Mike have been doing quite a bit and love doing it, and I've been lucky to get out there with them a few times, and it's just so much fun to try stick baiting for tuna. It's the most exciting way, I reckon, to catch them. So I guess the next question we get is, when would you choose to cast a stick bait?
Saris. They're blowing up. I mean, it's them and gannets are probably the two things we look for.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, 9 times out of 10 you're not going to cast if you don't see a tuna jumping around. That's a pretty good giveaway. Gannets are definitely probably the best eye in the sky. But depending on the bait, usually if there's Saris around, gannets will be on them. But sometimes when the bait's small, like pilchard or little slimies or frogmouth or whatever, you'll get a lot of mutton birds, and they're a bit harder to sort of catch on stick baits when they're on that, but they'll still eat, just because they're all focused on a lot smaller baits. But Saris are, I don't think I've ever seen them chasing Saris and not smash a stick bait pretty easily.
Yeah.
The Saris, they only jump when they're being chased by something. So it's not like, I don't know. I find skippies, they jump for no reason sometimes, but Saris, they're always jumping because something's on them.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I agree with that.
All right. So, might show you a bit of the gear that we would use for stick baiting. So this is a trophy hunter rod with a Stella. Was it 14,000?
I use a 14,000 Stella, 65-pound Power Pro, 130-pound leader, and then a lure that, I mean, generally when they're on Saris, in all honesty, lures are, as long as they cast a long way, that's probably the biggest thing, because especially if you're uncomfortable in a certain boat, I usually get any new guy on the boat, I usually just say, just cast as practice, because when it happens, you want to be able to cast, or get comfortable casting in a certain position, because, you know, they're never going to be exactly where you're comfortable casting. And sometimes you need to get the lure 60, 70 metres away from the boat. And they travel, like you can get them 80, 100 metres away from the boat. I think the further you can cast, the more water you can rip it back on. And I just skip it most of the time when they're on Saris. There's no point trying to be, because the problem is the boat's always moving, and trying to sweep a lure while the boat's moving is almost impossible. So just keeping all the line out of the water and just keep that lure just skipping across the surface is probably the most important and most effective, I reckon.
I think it's really important to add, no matter how good this is, it's useless if you can't cast. The cast is the most important thing. When you land it in the spot, like you know you're going to get a bite sometimes. And it doesn't matter. Everyone's like, what's the best stick bait? well, this is good, but you need to be able to cast them. And you like a good cast as well. Like so many times we get the person going, I can't cast over my left, and that's it. The opportunity's gone. So practice over the left, over the right. The casting is the most important bit, the distance.
Like Scooter's a prime example for that. He comes out on the boat flat out, and I tell him to learn how to cast both hands, and he still only casts one way. He's yelling at me, turn the boat. It's true. You're not learning, but anyway. It does pay to do, like, it does pay to actually practice before you go. And, like, because you can't prepare yourself for when it actually happens and it's all going down. You're seeing them jumping out everywhere and you can't catch them. It's good to sort of be ready for it.
Lures like this will actually help you. They actually come with technology with a ball in the back to help you cast. So a lot of the Shimanos will do that. That and the sardine ball here. They actually come with a ball in the back. They'll help you cast.
Yeah, so mid-air, that ball slides to the back and just shapes it. So rather than tumbling in the air, it just holds straight. That's how you can sort of carry the distance a bit better, especially into wind.
All right. Oh,
I can keep going through the stick baits if you want.
Yeah, just have a chat.
So I mean, this is like basically the easiest stick bait I'll give to most like anglers like GTs and stuff. Probably not tuna. They're level. They're a level sink. So generally the weight is in the middle. The ones that have the weight in the back, which these will do, and these ones here, they will cast the best. The longer profile skinny lures will actually stick to the water better. The longer profile lures in general will, so like a longer skirt will stick to the water better. And it's actually very crucial, obviously. Like if you're going to sit there and sweep and you've got a lure that's blowing out, you can miss the bite, the lure gets fouled, then your chance is over. So lures like long and skinny, very, very good for sticking to the water. And as Mike said, you literally just rod tip up and skipping it. Most of the time, Sauries, that's what they're doing. They're just jumping across the water. So that thing's just skipping along, imitating that.
Like, yeah, even when you're casting, you're sort of almost halfway, like 3/4 of its flight, you're flicking your bail arm over, so all the excess line doesn't flick out into the water, and you've got to wind all that back first before you can start skipping it, because it allows, once the lure hits the water, it sort of bogs down a bit, and then your line stuck to the water doesn't let it come up for the first 5 or 10 metres. If you can just, it's just refining all that the little things.
Snap your bail arm over before it lands.
Straighten your line out in the air, and as soon as it lands, you're already starting to wind. I think that's what I've sort of what I try and do.
The good thing about skipping as well, I find, is once you get the bite, it's actually you're almost ready to go straight away. A lot of the times with the sweep, if you get a bite too far back, if you don't know how to wind into the bite really, really quickly, you can stuff it up again. Whereas on the skip, usually it's in the hip or under the arm. You get the bite, you're ready.
You're loaded into it.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, there is times where you would sort of blind cast. I reckon. We've had times, especially a couple of years ago down the coast, where they were just no birds. That's the killer. When there's no birds on them and they're just randomly blowing up, it's hard, because you basically just run to them. They're down. They're up. They're back to where you were. Go over there. They go down, you go back to where they were, they go down, and you can chase your tail all day and get one fish, or you just need, it's all luck, really. Birds are everything. You follow them around. You almost can see their behaviour in the air.
Yeah, the body language in the
air.
A
bird, I know it sounds weird, but a bird's body language is like, you can be looking this way and going, something's happening behind me, because I can tell what all them birds are doing, and they're all legging it to a spot behind me, and it's like, just start travelling that way, and then all of a sudden, they know what's going on. I don't know how, but they know what happens a minute before it happens. So it sort of gives you a good heads up.
Good pair of binoculars.
Yeah, binos are definitely good to scan. But, yeah, there needs to be birds there to see them, so. Gannets are definitely, I reckon their main food source would be sauries. So they're looking for the sauries and you're looking for the tuna, and so.
They can be hard to see sometimes with cloud cover, really hard. So you got to, if someone sees them and there's a bit of cloud around, I think just don't stop looking at it. No. Just talk whilst looking at them.
Even one, you get closer and then it turns into 3. It's amazing. I don't know how it happens. They just materialise out of nowhere.
And they also disappear just as quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're lazy. Like, not they're lazy, but they're obviously smart, so they don't waste energy when they know it's not going to happen. They'll hit the water, they'll bomb the water, and then sometimes they just won't get back up, and then there'll be clumps of 50 sitting on the water, and you're like, get up, go looking so we can find them. But sometimes it's just a waiting game before they get back up and go again. It happens like the flick of a switch generally. Some days it doesn't stop. Some days it happens for 20 minutes. Some days it happens. You know, it's a big ocean too. You can be in a good zone, and there could be a zone that's 10 times better 2 miles away. So, just how it is.
What about drag setting?
I reckon. Are you going to talk? Sorry, you go. Sorry.
I was going to say yours is probably different than mine. But.
No, I think tuna fishing, it's a killer because you have a long rod, right? And it's all good when the fish is not close to the boat to have a heavier drag. But you get the fish near the boat, and that's generally when their behaviour changes. They'll run. You'll just be pumping them up from the deep, straight up and down, and then literally seconds before the gaff goes in is usually when they'll make their last dish out of it for a run. And if you've got a rod dug into your hips and it's out there, and then all of a sudden the fish runs under the boat around there, you're going to get turned inside out. Probably snap a rod. If you can't get it out of your hip quick enough and drop it down into the water, because a lot of people sort of get into the fight and they just tighten the drag up because the fish hasn't taken a run during the fight, which is usually they'll do their first run and then you'll get a lot back. And when a fish has got some angle on a rod, you can put a lot of hurt on it, but straight up and down or under the boat, you're almost powerless. And then once it gets to the boat, you're in trouble. So I would generally run. If you hold that,
You want to load one up?
oh, I'm not so much about that. I would generally run a lot like a drag that. Wind this up a bit. So like, I don't know how much is on it. Okay, Paul. So like, so you're comfortable and the fish can take line near the boat, and then if you need to apply more pressure, I use my hand on the reel, sort of just thumbing it, because you can't just dump it. Like when it takes off, it's like that. So you can't just like a lever drag, back off the lever drag, or if you open a spool, you could probably lose a finger realistically. And under load, the rod will just snap up, and it'll be a nightmare. So I run a drag that's sort of comfortable. If you do get in trouble, something that you can get out of your rod bucket or your groin or wherever you put the butt of your rod. Sometimes they get, and almost just be wary that it's going to go down, like it's going to try and stitch you up when it does get to the boat. I think that's the biggest thing. Like you almost would transfer from fighting a fish in your groin to under your arm. So if it does go down, you can go down with it, and then any extra pressure you need to at the boat. When they're doing their circles, you can just use hand pressure, and they usually always circle under the boat, and then they'll come out on top, and that's when they start to come up. When they're coming up, I grab the spool, put the pressure on, let them go back underneath, do the same thing, grab the spool. It's a waiting game till they get into the gaff range. What about you? You thinking anything?
Up to angler ability as well.
Yeah,
it's so different. It's the same with everything. The stick baits and even the rod, like you really have to cater to the angler. So it's hard. Everyone always goes, what's the best rod and stuff? Well, how good are you? How experienced are you? So just do it to your ability. And same thing, that just controlled hand pressure is actually, there's an art to doing it, but it's very useful. Exactly how Mike said. So basically don't do it too hard. It's because if the fish needs to run, you can just take the hand off the spool and let the drag take over. So it's a bit of an art. It's practice. We do it for everything, for kings and GTs and everything like that. So, but it's just practice. That's all it is, and just knowing your ability, the rod's ability. Yeah.
They break. You can get a fish that's 50 kilos and it'll come in like it was. Yeah. 10 kilos. Well. And you can get a fish that's 50 kilos that will give you hell. And I've had fish that are 50 kilos that I don't even know how we got them. They are like. Scooter probably remembers the day with Leroy. This thing knew where the motor was, that was for sure. And anyway, it definitely helps with someone that knows how to drive the boat too. Like if you need to get out of trouble, I normally would even if we're short-handed, I sometimes just keep the boat in gear, locked right, so the motor's always driving away from the fish. Just never. If you're on the right-hand side of the boat, never turn the boat to the left, because the back end of the boat's just going to run over the fish. It's always the motor. I mean. The fish will do its circle, and it'll always do its circle, unless it sort of wigs out and goes for a run. But if you always have the motor turned and driving away, which most boats can just lock on one side, and if you are short-handed and no one's on the wheel, that's what I've found is pretty handy. What do you reckon?
Yeah,
anything?
that's it. I mean, anything else? Like Don't use snap swivels. I was just looking at this. Everyone's probably thinking what that is. You can use, so the old split ring and swivel technique was our favourite way to change them, and probably is for most people still. But if you use a snap swivel, like anything you can open with your hand, the fish can open up. So people are like, why can't I just use a snap swivel? It's because if the fish eats the head first, and they do, kings and GTs, tuna will do it as well, they can open the snap. So no to traditional snap swivels. Things you can't open with your hand, like this access swivel and the swivel and split ring technique only.
Yeah,
I think that's it, apparently.
Yep. Have we got any questions on stick baiting?
Oh, yes, good.
Tre-
Again,
trebles if you want to land them and gaff them and stick them in the boat. If you're sick of catching them or sick of dealing with them at the boat, one barbless single on the back of the hook, on the back of the lure, just so you can unhook them at the side of the boat. But yeah, I think trebles.
We start with trebles usually.
Yeah,
if it's hot, go to singles because they're dangerous. Like once the tuna's doing its thing, it's
Sorry about the
dangerous.
guy in the back.
One single, like I usually do like a treble and a single now to begin with. If you're ever going to sweep your stick bait, generally you'll get better action with a single on the tail. Some floating stick baits need the two trebles to keep it in the water, otherwise they blow out too easily. But yeah, I just run a single now. I think it's just safer as well, but it does give you a little bit of action. Sometimes it casts better as well. I don't know why. The single on the tail kind of just makes it fly through the air a little bit better. Yeah.
I reckon poppers would be a good. We don't normally, but I think if you're getting into an area like I was talking about before, where you're prospecting more, or you just drift blind casting, 100%. It'd be good to have someone have a popper. We were doing it once. You had a popper going. Yep. They were definitely more active on the stick baits that day, just because they were feeding on souries. I think poppers kill it in certain parts of the world where
Pacifics.
Yeah.
Every time we go to the islands, Vanuatu, Fiji. We're usually blind casting. They seem to like it there.
Yeah, I think blind casting, it'd be silly not to have a popper working, just get the surface action.
Pencil poppers are really good, if you know what those are. Like long profile poppers, because they skip really well as well, and you can sweep them. Yeah. They like speed. Like, they seem to be triggered by speed.
Speed's good because you can fool them a bit easier, you know.
They don't give them a chance to look at it, reaction bite, better hook up. Most of the time. Depends.
As in during the day, or? A lot of the good stuff doesn't come with hooks, generally.
Yeah.
The only ones that probably do are like your divers and probably the sardine balls, but yeah, I would probably, when you're buying them, just check with the guys at the counter.
If you're not confident with it, change it.
Generally I run all BKK hooks generally. Yeah. They've proven themselves to me. I haven't caught millions of fish on them, and well, probably not millions, but yeah, a lot of fish without any drama. Not for tuna anyway. For straightening, I've never straightened a fish on it. I think a tuna's got too straight a face, so they don't like. It's hard for them to hook in the mouth and hook somewhere else to sort of like straighten anything out, like a kingfish or a GT. That's generally how you'll straighten them. It's not normally the fish pulling against your line against the hook. It's more them just hooked in two spots and
uneven pressure.
Yeah.
Two hook points.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line with going nuts and like trying to keep, because some days they are definitely scared of the boat. And most of the time they're not. You can't just drive over the top of them and then cast into them and expect them to sort of stay there. That's why a long cast is key. So I try and keep engine revs always at a similar, like get it up on the plane and hold it there rather than, you know, like I try not to change the harmonics too much. That's just with how I've done it and it seems to be good. You sort of get up to close enough range, try and work out where your friend or whoever's casting the rod is, where they're comfortable casting from. You know, so if you're driving up to the school and they're all casting from the right, as soon as you're about to stop, just sort of turn the boat a little bit so they've all got a broadside cast at the fish.
All right.
Is that?
Yeah.
Griffo, you got one, mate? Braid or leader? I use a 65 pound. If you were listening before, that's what I said.
You said it already, mate.
Maybe we'll talk about another technique, which is cubing and jigging. which I'd say over the last 5 years, it's been done less and less.
Yeah.
Probably more, people are either like sort of trolling for them or stick baiting. But there's times when cubing and jigging will be your best friend. So I guess we can have a bit of chat about that. Like, when would you choose to?
I reckon cubing's a forgotten art, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's such a cool way to catch them. Like we used to cube as well, and it was probably some of the funnest fishing I've done. I'd rather catch them cubing than trolling, just because you can watch them come up to the back of the boat and feed them a bait and just watch them eat it. And it's actually pretty fun when it's actually when it finally happens. You could be sitting there for an hour and then nothing, and then was that a flash? And then they're all just your big yellowfin feeding at the back of the boat, like basically like yakkers. But a lot of the original, like not original, but the older guys that have fished for tuna forever, cubing was the only way. I remember when I first started tuna fishing, trolling wasn't really the thing to do. It was more cubing was the thing to do.
Yeah.
So, what do you reckon? Haven't done a lot of it.
I've only caught little yellowfin on it, so
No,
I mean it's great to catch albacore and get a blue shark up.
I think if there's
time.
I think if there's definitely tuna in the area, they're not jumping around chasing souries, and you know that they're getting caught. I've had it sometimes where you've been catching them in the area and they've shut down, and then we've just started cubing, and literally it happens it can happen really quick, and then it can take a couple of hours. It just depends on a bit of luck, I reckon, with cubing.
Yeah, I think the time of day is so important. Like it's like dogtooth. Like they can have a crap day, and as soon as the sun goes down, it's just like a dinner bell. Like when you've got to.
Definitely, but I've definitely caught them any time of the day. I've had them first thing in the morning, during the middle of the day, sun full beam. But yeah, prime time's it's probably like any type of fishing, first, last light.
Yeah.
But no one really likes to sort of stay out there till dark too much these days. You try and get them before there and get home.
Yeah, I would just add to that. But one day I remember being out on a boat that was next to Mike, and everyone was trolling. It was about 10 or 11 o'clock, I think, around that time, and I think Mike started cubing and caught some like right next to us, and no one else caught anything.
That was the day that I think a few boats were catching yellowfin, and then we went to the area and it was dead, and we were still marking them. But yeah, we just started cubing in the middle of the day, and yeah, we got three. We saw three in the tube trail. We caught all three, and like they sat around the tube trail while we were fighting, and then put out another bait once we landed that one and got another one. So yeah, it's pretty cool fun, especially on a nice day. Like it's a bit hard work when it's blowing a gale and the conditions aren't. But like I enjoy it more when it's like nice and flat. In the way you can see everything. The lines aren't tearing off at the back, and yeah.
And one other thing I was going to say is that when we were talking about stick baiting before, most of the time it's for yellowfin. Like, don't get me wrong, bluefin will smash stick baits all day long, but it's normally harder to find them on the surface, I guess, with bluefin. The times when we've caught them on stick baits has been when we've caught them whilst trolling and then thrown some cubes in the water, had them around the boat, and then throw stick baits at them. Had a lot of fun that way. But with cubing, it works for both yellowfin and bluefin. But the other thing to remember is with bluefin, when they're around, it's good to have your cubes ready, a bucket full of cut up pillies ready. And if you do hook one on the troll, just throw them in the water, and you can get a big school around you. Which some of that footage you saw before with all the bluefin underwater, that's exactly how that happened. And with jigging side of it, we grouped it with cubing because normally you only jig whilst you're cubing, and it's really effective for albacore, I would say. I don't know, have you caught any yellowfin on the?
I haven't caught them I haven't caught big ones.
Yeah.
Definitely lots of bluefin. When the bluefin are under the boat, they'll eat anything really. It's the hardest part's finding them. Just a sort of. But not yellowfin. I mean, I've caught small yellowfin. I haven't actually jigged whilst there's been big yellowfin in the trail, so usually you're just trying to catch them.
Yeah, so
it'd be good to do it again.
Yeah. Is there any questions on cubing and jigging? Not really. It's the forgotten.
Excellent. Yeah, no one wants to know.
No one wants to fish tubing. That's all right. Well, the next question is probably one that we get asked more than ever. And that's why we need the brains group that we got here, which is where to fish, like where to find the fish. So we
Just take scooter fishing.
Yeah, take Scooter. He knows.
Scooter's the man.
He's the guru. But we get a lot of people focus strongly on charts, and I think we'll have a little bit of a chat about charts in a second. But you've got to think of you got to use that as one of the means. Does everyone know how to read the chart here? We might have maybe we should actually bring a chart up. Maybe we can, with the technical support there is. This was courtesy of Sondel, I think, this one. So Sondel put a mark on the charts there, and that's what happened on the right of it. So I guess in this chart, all we've got is current and some sea temperature. So I think you can see there how the arrows are like smaller. I wish I had a pencil that I could reach up there.
Yeah, where the right-hand part of the arrow is pointing is basically where the current's feeding into, and then it turns slack and it starts to turn on itself. So it generally means it's sort of an eddy. Plus you've got the warmer water to the north there. There's a temp break. It's just that's where you're fishing out of. Yeah, that's sort of the best looking area. You got slack water. You got an eddy. You got a temp break. It's just a starting point generally. Until you get out there and you feel it out.
And looking at that chart, you could easily get bluefin as much as you could get yellowfin in that.
Yeah. The time of year, I don't know what temperature.
Yeah, I'm not sure the time of year.
Yeah, you don't know what temperatures they actually are, but because depending on the whole map, those colours change.
Yeah. But if that was one that sometimes you would see where, if that was 18 degrees hitting up into that orange area, if that was like say 21, and you've got that temp sort of change, something like that is pretty perfect. You could get any of the species in that, which is ideal.
I mean, I don't think temperature for yellowfin is anything.
Yeah.
You'll catch them.
Yeah.
We've had them through April, 27 degrees, and then every week the temperature's dropping and they're still there. I think in winter sometimes when you're following a bite, if someone's gone out the day before, it's handy to say, did you get them in the warmer side or the cooler side?
Yeah.
That's probably all that matters. I've seen them we've had 2 degree temp breaks of 18 degrees to 16 degrees, and you think they're going to be in the warmer side and they're in the colder side. I don't know. I think the break's good because it's almost like a fence for them to run down, but you generally find a lot of bait on the temp breaks, and you'll see the tuna birds, which are a different type of bird. They're like a swallow, like a grey bird. They just bounce along the water a bit more. But when there's a good temp break, you'll see hundreds of them generally. Anything on that, Jay?
No. Can we get the recent one up?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's almost in any type. Even with marlin, sometimes you'll find those balls of faint bait. Yeah. When you're just trolling for blues, sometimes.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
But 100% for the tuna, they love it. Even the bluefin. I find the bluefin, I don't know what it is on the sounder. Sometimes the bluefin, the surface clutter just thickens right out, and people are catching them in it. It must be plankton or something that, like a chain.
I've always found with bluefin it's cobalt blue.
Yeah, definitely a cleaner water, whereas yellowfin are a bit more.
Yeah, they can be
anything.
Greeny,
Yeah.
Can be a bit of anything. There's another little chart there, and an example of the Profigi matching the bait. You can see how close it is, how that works. But
yeah.
Was that a zero line, Sondel? I want you. Yeah. So that's another chart there of an area that is working.
Sorry, mate. I don't know what
Altimetry.
zero line means. Jay?
It's between an upwelling and a downwelling, isn't it?
It's generally where bait's getting pushed to the surface, so it's sort of a good starting point for everything. If the bait's getting pushed to the surface, the birds can see it, the fish are eating it. I think it's just handy for fishermen.
Yeah, I think a perfect storm on the charts, we probably don't have one there, is a 0 altimetry line, and currents that are those little small arrows there where it's sort of eddying around, and a temperature break, and then if you've got chlorophyll as well, which is your food-rich.
Yeah, my
water.
perfect scenario is if that temp break would be straight off JB heads there in that slack water.
Yeah.
And it's just a starting point. Like you can see that anywhere up the coast. I mean, once you go north of Sydney, not many people chase them. Like not many people will prospect to go and chase tuna because it's a long way out, and they've got a little bit easier fishery inshore, so they don't need to sort of travel for them. But until they find out they're there, and then people will travel everywhere to go have a good bite.
Yeah, and I think it's like sea surface temperatures and all these charts are that's just one of your measures. If you've got friends and a circle of friends that are going fishing a lot, it's good to talk to each other to find out what's going on as well. If they've been out there catching some fish, it helps. Yeah. And also there are consistent there are spots that, do worth fishing around, like whether it's a canyon, Browns or Southern Canyons.
Generally, like when we go on Malakula, Ed will always go to a spot, like historically really done well at.
Yeah.
Always produces fish, like year after year. I don't know what it is. There must be something down there, like causing something for the bait to be there. I don't know. We always go back to historic spots, and it always every time you catch a new fish, you're like, oh right, it's on the same line as that. Yeah, I don't know. Can't explain it, but it seems to work every time.
I was going to ask the question of what's your depth sounder sort of settings do you recommend?
I run mine to scan the top 70 fathoms of the water. I think if you're seeing anything deeper than that, I mean, plus a wide transducer is not going to pick up a hell of a lot deeper than 70 fathoms. I mean, it will, but it'll be just faint and
hard to catch them when they're in the deeper.
140 metres down. But yeah, look, you'll mark fish some days 50 fathoms down and stay in the area. They'll come up. Sometimes they come up. Sometimes they go down.
Yeah.
It's just there's no written rule with them.
Yeah. Is there any questions on where to fish? Any other questions you want to ask? No?
Look, it's all factors. I think it's just sometimes you want to go fishing, and the charts don't look amazing out the front, so you're just picking the best part of that chart. I mean, if you've got free range and you can travel wherever to the best charts, then sometimes the weather, it's all weather related plus access. Sometimes people game boats, they can't travel, so I think you got to deal with what you can go to. Again, a perfect scenario: 0 line through temp break on slack water, feeding in from some current.
But like what, about 3 weeks ago, there was quite a few yellowfin caught.
Yellowfin off tuna, and it didn't look that great off Sydney.
No, didn't look good. And the only thing is there was a little bit more current then.
Yeah.
And the only side to that is that they're generally going to be moving faster when there's current and not holding as much.
Yeah.
Which is why, your trolling technique is good, but stick baiting, if you see yellowfin that boiling up but they're moving fast, you best to pull.
Sometimes it's better to pull the lures in.
Pull the lures in.
Just cast. Yep.
Drive over to them.
We used to do it. We used to chase them on the troll, and you lose. Remember, we've had some
up.
days where we just half an hour and they're still in front of you, 20 metres, and you just,
chasing them around all day, couldn't get to them. It's one of those days. So I'd just pull them in, cast at them. It's effective. It's more effective.
And you do get a bite every now and again, just blind, rather than sort of. If you're chasing them, you're trying to drive over them, you're usually just going to scare them off before they see your lures out the back, 100 metres out the back of your boat. Whereas, at least with a stick bait, you can get it 50 metres in front of your boat into their face.
Yeah.
Nah, it's generally in general, like last year, what happened down the south coast is something special. But 200 fathoms is sort of the only hard part is 9 times out of 10 you're crossing the shelf in winter. Gannets are stacked up because there's all slimies through there, and you do get souries on the shelf, and it's hard. It's a hard one to sort of go, okay, I'm going to put the time in 80 fathoms and try, and who knows? Like, I just don't think people do it. Many people do it because, in general, they're deeper. They're generally deeper than 200 fathoms. They're usually over the edge of the shelf. So 500 fathoms is pretty comfortable depth, a pretty confident depth if you've got gannets in that. Once you get out to 500 fathoms and you're seeing gannets, that's definitely, you're feeling a bit more confident, rather than being in 80 fathoms and there's gannets everywhere. Unless you've seen tuna jumping around, you're sort of like, are they just on the bait that's here, or are they on actual, is there fish rounding them up? And yeah. Like, unless someone said, I got him in 80 fathoms yesterday, generally yes. It's hard sometimes. You're looking back going, am I making a mistake? Yeah. It's a big ocean. It's huge, mate. And especially if you're out there by yourself. Like, it's the worst thing to do, in all honesty, if you can avoid it, is to go prospecting by yourself. If you've got 3 boats out there, you're covering 3 days of fishing in one. Like, realistically, sort of, as long as you're not following each other around. That's sort of the way I try and... You always try and pair up with a couple of mates, or you feel way more confident if you got 2 or 3 boats in different areas scouting, because you can literally be 2 miles away in the wrong spot, not catching them, and go, oh, I should have went left instead of right.
Yeah. And
your days are changed.
All right. We might move to like sort of the fighting techniques. So when you actually hook up. I think one of the most important things is driving the boat when you've hooked up, and just like ways to try and reduce the length of the fight is what I think we've chat about. Is there anything? Yeah, if you anything you want to.
Oh, like on the troll or on.
Well, both ways. I have it actually as both. So
trolling. I mean, you're not really. It's not like casting a marlin where you're trying to just get it on the surface and tag it and release it. Whereas,
but you know when they get out, when they're stubborn.
When they're stubborn. I mean, I find most tuna get stubborn is because you let them get down in their pattern early. I think you need to sort of apply pressure early to sort of. It's almost like you break them early and they give up. Yeah, they give up quick. Like, you can have 50-kilo fish come in and you go, oh, it's a striped tuna. Like, it's weird that you say that, but you can do it. And then you can have them where I've heard 60-kilo fish go 3 or 4 hours because they've just stuck in their pattern, and you've got no. They're hard because you pull out some angle, and they just dive back under the boat, and you haven't got as much power at 90 degrees down as you do at 45 degrees out. Like, you got a lot more pulling power. Plus, if you're sort of, I can't handle like just the straight up and down fight. Like, even if I'm on the rod, I'm the most impatient person. But we normally drive off a little bit to. Yeah, normally I just again, you can get fish that you can't do anything about it, and if you're stuck in the fire, it's your problem. Or you pass the rod over to everyone and deal with it that way, because you do get hurt especially on a stick bait rod. Definitely on a trolling rod, you can do 3 or 4 hours. Not many people can do 3 or 4 hours on a stick bait rod unless they've got a harness. But once you harness up a stick bait rod, you lose all its power, in my opinion. Anyway, it's you're sort of stuck like out here, and you've only got that motion. Whereas with a stick bait, the stick bait rod, you've got to use everything. You're winding it right down to you're lowering it down to the rod, to the water, trying to keep a bit more angle on it. I'm not a fan. I mean, I know why people do it, because
it's painful.
Like, it's painful. Like, and you can burn you basically. I don't know, it's like you get lactic acid in your back, and it cooks your back quick. So it happens to me, and I've done heaps of it, and I get to the point where I'm like, shit, I can't pass this rod over, but I don't. But like, I want to. So I don't know, but yeah, keeping angle is probably everything. Keeping angle away from the engine. That's why the right. If I usually fight everything on the driver's side, just so you can see the line down. If you're fighting on the passenger side, you can't see where the line is a lot of the time because you're looking over the angler's shoulder. And That's pretty much, if you can keep everything out the side, always turning around to your right, you're always driving the engine around, drive off it. It's hard, it's not easy to sort of, sometimes to drive off it because it pulls the line out the back of the boat. But you get enough angle and then just keep that pressure and just even sometimes just putting the boat in forward, pulling it out of gear, pulling it forward just to keep the angler comfortable. I think that's the main thing. You rarely ever backing up on a tuna or driving towards it. You're just really just trying to keep line tight.
Yeah. Very rare you get them on the surface, but sometimes.
Sometimes
they
they
swim on the
do.
surface.
Yeah, sometimes they do weird things, and we've had times where me and Alex are arguing. I'm like, "That's a dolphin fish, mate." And he's like, "I saw it jump out of the water and eat the frigging lure. It's no dolphin fish." I'm like, "I've never seen a yellowfin fight like that."
Yeah.
But
unfortunately, we lost that fish, so we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had to
It was definitely a yellowfin though.
It was.
I watched it clear as day swim away from the gaff.
Yep.
Anyway.
I guess when we get the tuna like close to the boat, the next thing we would normally get asked is like, how do you leader it or how do you gaff it? Where do you gaff it? And I guess we always try and gaff them in the head or the shoulders.
Yeah, and you don't want to damage meat really. Plus, if you gaff them in the tail, they just turn their head down, and usually the gaff goes with it.
Yeah.
As soon as that gaff goes in, it's like you've just hit a. Well, you can imagine if a gaff went in you, you wouldn't sit there. I probably would. I'd roll over. But no, like the amount of times I know how heavy how hard they're going to pull, and I reckon I've had 2 or 3 gaffs ripped out of my hand.
Yeah.
Especially if you never gaff a tuna that's not on the surface. So you can, but. Anywhere sort of, if you try and stick the gaff right down in the water and stick a gaff into it, it's only going to it's got all its tail in the water, so it's only just going to have full propulsion. And they have this like rocket. It's like you're not really prepared for it. Sometimes people will go in if they hold on.
I think leadering is pretty important. The footage we saw of Alex earlier doing the perfect little pinches.
Okay, there's a story to that one. Because that's not, we got to, before that little bit of footage, I don't know if you saw it, if you did or didn't, but I was so very gentle on that fish because it only had one of the 2 hooks of a Profigi rig. Actually, it was before we had the good hooks that the boys now bring out, but this little guy here was a few years ago. And all it was hooked on was one of them, and it was just on a tiniest bit of skin, which had been torn out about that much. So, and the guy that was fighting the fish had never caught a tuna before and invested it was nearly 2 hours on the bluefin because we had a 4-way on. So I had to be really gentle. And in many ways you wanted to slow the boat down, but if you slow the boat down, there could be a bit of slackness with that. So we just had to be patient. So you can see how gentle it was for that. But that technique's like pinching, which normally I wouldn't be that gentle on a tuna. But I guess, I don't know, we could show.
Depends on, if you've got one on a skirt
Yeah.
and you got heavy leader,
Yeah, you can.
you can wrap up on it and, if you don't really care what happens, swing on it. But they can pull back. That's the only, depending on the size of the fish, you got to be prepared to either commit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you read the body language on the trace and feel it. It's hard to explain, I guess. But, I don't know if you're, had a dog, and, you can tell if it's going to go.
Yeah.
If it's going to go too hard, and you'll have to dump. But that was perfect. You see the hook up, and then you adjust your power accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, the way I always look at leadering is that if it takes 8 kilos of pressure to get the fish to the boat, it doesn't take 20 kilos of pressure for the last couple of meters. It's just going to freak the fish out. Just use the power you need to get it to you. Don't go overboard unless you want to have a fight back from the fish. If you want to have that.
Usually there'll be a big head shake.
Yeah.
And that's when things are going to change. It'll be doing its circles where the rod's just going like this, and then all of a sudden the rod goes. Yeah. And you're like, oh, something's happening, and then.
Yeah. It's not happy. Anyone got questions on any of that?
I'll reiterate. That's probably a lot of the times we lose tuna is during that head shake. You've got to be ready for it.
Yeah, to keep the.
I think we lost one that time. That's when it was doing the same thing.
Yeah. That's generally when you're losing. We've lost big fish at the boat, big head shakes.
Yeah. Expect it. because like it's coming,
'Cause
and then you
it's
just got to get ready to wind into it.
Yeah, just to keep that line tight is so hard
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Other times they just swallow the whole lure down their gut, and you can do whatever you want.
Perfect.
Pretty much to them, which is pretty common. All right, so we sort of like at the point where you got any sort of general questions. Anyone got? Yeah, you can go first. So yellowfin pretty much from March to September's but you can get it.
Yeah, I reckon you get a summer run March, April,
Yeah.
where the water's peaking at like 26 degrees. Usually you get the big ones with blue marlin. They're sort of the same run, and that's when it's probably the most fun really, because you catch everything. You got blue marlin, striped marlin, yellowfin. Well, yeah, it's like it went. Yeah, with a couple of years ago we had I think it was crazy out the front here. We had weeks of glass outs and blue marlin and yellowfin everywhere. But and then there's usually a gap between about April, somewhere between April and May, and then the winter run comes in. But there's no rule; it's all changes.
A couple of years ago, we had that bluefin run
September.
Yeah.
We didn't get it until
It's months after it usually comes.
yeah.
But traditionally bluefin here is right now.
No one's been fishing. That's the only
Yeah,
killer. Like
it's-
the weather's been so
weather's been
terrible. So
shocking.
there's been normally you hear them. Oh, they're called a Burmese, Bateman's, JB.
Yeah.
Like if the weather's been good, you can literally track them till they get to Sydney, Port Kembla, Kiama, and then you're like everyone starts going out of Sydney, and they're like, sometimes the main body of bluefin are to the south, but stragglers are to the north, and yeah. Like Sydney, I'd say your typical spot you would start would be Browns.
Yeah.
Like that would be, it's always a
Yeah.
good starting. Like 9 times out of 10 people will drive out of Sydney and go Bait Station, Brown, Southern Canyon. It's like your three directions really. It's like straight east, south or northeast.
In that footage with all the bluefin around the boat, that was a couple of miles inside of Browns.
Yeah. That day we literally, I said to Alex, I wouldn't mind having the lures going over Browns on first light, and we didn't even get, like, I was ripping them out of my hands. I was sitting, I'm like, was that a striped tuna?
Yeah.
What was going on there? And I'm putting it back up again, and ripping it off again. I'm like, it was still dark. It was still nearly dark. Like I could barely see the spread. I'm like going, what's happening? And then the other rod just got screaming off, and I'm like, these are actually big fish.
Yeah.
And luckily Alex had 25 kilos of pre-cut pilchards, thanks to Jay and Scooter.
Yep.
The day before, and that's probably the only reason we actually had such a blinder of a day, because we were ready to catch them. Which pretty much every other time I've been out, I've never had pre-cut, cryovac, thawed out pilchards.
You're welcome.
yeah, thanks, Jay.
Yep. Sorry, Derek.
Coming down to the trolling, so whilst I'm working out in the upbringers, running skirts, they seem to catch in the wake. Does that impact visibility, or do you have to get clear of the wake in water? Can they see the smoke trail?
Yeah.
Like we got to the upbringers, then use something like the
Like the divers to get underneath, or a Profigi to get underneath. Look, I think if you have riggers, it gives you that spread. So you're going to have some lures that are in the clear, and you're going to have some lures that are fighting against all that whitewash. It's good to have both, because the whitewash is also it's action, and yeah, we hook fish on skirts like right up in the corner as well. But I would say that we get more fish on the lures that are in the back, out in the clear water. But yeah, there's no rules on that. But yeah, if you've got a boat, ideally you have riggers. But yeah, one way you can utilise depth is the type of lure you're using. Yeah.
You showed us like 37 kilo setup. Would you normally run 37?
24 to 37. Yeah, something like, there's a 25 Talico runs 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 24 is pretty safe. Like, there's not much you can't land on 24 kilo. 37's just a bit more. You do hook that one that's 150 kilo bluefin, and it'd be handy to have.
Yeah. I think people are using 37 more in the new style of reels.
Yeah.
Like an 80 wide Tiagra it's just heavy work.
Yep.
You wouldn't do it. But on a Talico 50, it's easy. So
Yeah, this is the size of a 50A
Yeah.
Tiagra, which is, like it's, and to be honest, they have some cranking power. Like it's
yeah.
a beast of a reel. Once you're hooked up, you sort of
A little
go,
bit higher.
this is
The retrieval's a little bit faster too, so you can really put pressure.
Yeah, I mean the Ategras are still great.
Yeah, they're
Great
well
reels.
fuzzy.
They'll robust. They'll do the job all day long too.
Yeah.
Are you thinking 24 is not? Is it, you were trying to say 37 only? No, 24. I mean 24. I used to only run 24 because it's not easy to have full set of 15s, full set of 24s, full set of 37s, 10s. Like it takes ages just sometimes, unless you know it's expensive.
Yeah, adds up.
Yeah.
But you will get the odd really big fish that gives you hard time on 24.
24 is safe in my opinion. Like it's.
You shouldn't lose a tuna on just because
takes
it's 24.
longer.
Just take longer. Yeah, you shouldn't lose it for that reason.
I think especially if you know how to stretch 20. You know, like
you put the drag up a bit.
stretch an outfit rather than you're not really to stretch 80. You're doing well. To stretch 24, you can almost fish 24 like standard 37.
If you try break 24 kilo line, it's
not
incredibly
easy.
hard. Through a rod and reel, it's almost impossible.
We had it. We hooked a mako on a Profigi one day, and we were chasing bust ups with. They're right in front of us. I'm like, yes, we're on. I'm looking over, like, what's going on? It's a mako, and trying to break it off. On 24, you got your sunset, thumbs on the spool, just ringing.
It stretches.
Stretched like
unbelievable.
crazy, like it's. And then you go, you think if it was a normal fish, it would have broke ages ago. As soon as it's a shark, they never break. Oh, on stick bait rods, I've never ever come close to getting done. I run 65 pound for two reasons: line capacity and casting. So there's something between, you know, it's quite strong. Like I've never had a breakage with it for needing to put more pressure on a fish. Because realistically, you can't put that much pressure through a stick bait rod. I mean, you can, but you just can't put enough to break 30 kilos of line. And yeah, it's. I would have had. I think I've probably 150, 200 meters have been the most I've ever.
Yeah, like
max.
Come close. It's weird. If you know how to fish it properly, like you can you can stop them.
Yeah, I think trolling, you're hooking a fish already 100 meters out or 80 meters out, then you're still trolling to catch more, and then you're dumping all that line whilst you're driving away from them. That's generally why you sort of lose a lot of line trolling, I reckon, rather than if you actually just stop the boat straight away and started getting into the fish, you wouldn't lose as much. Yeah.
How would you fish up like one?
I think Sondel's done that solo. He said he's asking how you do it solo. break some rods and lose some gas. Sondel. Call you Joe Oliver. No,
probably minimal.
Solar, yeah, like stick baiting. You mean? Well, if you're trolling, you wouldn't want to be trolling much more than 2 or 3 rods. I would, yeah. You just have to have everything handy. Like it's not going to be easy. Stick baiting and gaffing is not going to be easy. Like you know, you're gonna I mean, a boat like yours is not bad. It's a tough one. Like it's not easy. Like
depends on the fish.
I'd recommend just taking your mate. Yeah. Oh, in the troll. No. On the troll, you're 100% easier than on the stick bait. But solo stick baiting wouldn't be easy around the boat. You were solo with the kingy the other day. No, but like it's definitely, I don't know.
What's your thoughts on the flying fish?
The Nomad one? Yeah, we haven't really used it yet.
This has been the first season they've been out in, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's been no
They
fish.
came out they were launched during the
Marlin season.
Marlin season. They have been extremely successful in America. Like even like for us in this store, we've sold more to the US than we have locally, and they're huge over there. It's a call a nomad flying fish. So
Slipstream. Slipstream
yeah, we can
flying
bring
fish.
one up. We can bring one up, but we haven't tried it. But you could use it two ways. One, you can use it as a teaser, like we did that little bird teaser you saw before. You could put that in front of it. And the other one is you can actually just troll it with a hook in the back. Yeah, that's them there. We just haven't. Yeah, we haven't had much weather and tried them.
There's only been probably 4 or 5 days this season that's been fishable, and it's probably not a great. Yeah, hasn't been a bulk of fish around either.
Yeah. Any other questions we got? We all. It's been hard with the weather.
Not many people have been out. There was a couple of people out, I think, last weekend. Was it Skip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and prior to that, it was good, but there was only a couple of days that people could get out there. So it's
Still crap out there. Fuck.
yeah. Hopefully,
You need a week of weather, and just to sort of so people can, because at the moment you're getting a day of weather, and most tradies like fishing, so then they got to go to work because it's been raining, and then yeah, I don't know.
But you had to work, did you?
I don't work.
No.
I don't fish either.
Plays golf these days.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight. We do have a few specials on tonight if you want to grab anything. All the trophy under rods, we got like say 10% off those ones. And like Profigis, we've got like a box deal on them, and some of the stick baits, we've got say 20% off on some of them. But yeah, if you've got any other questions, feel free to come and ask us. I'd like to thank Mike.
This Shimano giveaways.
Oh yeah, we got a few giveaways at the back as well on your way out. And also on your chairs, you would have seen these guys. So this is from the Trophy Hunter boys. We've basically got stickers there if you want to put them on your reels or on your lure packs, I guess.
Yeah, they sort of
Mainly
go in
for
anything
reels.
really. We use them on
Yeah.
our spools a lot. Plus, if you've got your tackle boxes, you can just put all your size hooks, and it's just basically something for everything on there.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'd like to thank Mike from Trophy Hunter and Sondel as well, and obviously Jay. And thank you everyone for coming tonight. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.